hear some of Brahms's piano music, catch up with recent graduate Will Hearn, who'll be talking about his band Bethlehem Casual's new album The Tragedy of Street Dog, and hearing some music by Jodie Buckland, one of our pop music students, performing with the RNCM Session Orchestra. The RNCM may primarily be a music training college, but it's also one of the most significant arts venues in Manchester and the North West. There's a large concert hall and opera theatre, as well as smaller chamber music spaces and recording studios. These venues are of course dominated by student activity of different kinds, but the programme of events is diverse and also includes concerts from visiting and external professional artists. During my years at the RNCM, as well as hundreds of student performances, I've heard Carla Bley's Big Band, the Canadian folk band the Be Good Tanyas, a version of Schubert's Winterreise with a new film, local ensembles including Zaffa, the BBC Philharmonic and the Manchester Camerata, and even, perhaps more surprisingly, the Commonwealth Games weightlifting. The RNCM's programme of events has, like all venues all over the world, suffered a great deal from the current lockdown and travel restrictions. The programming team have been leading the way in finding music from the archive and addressing this as far as possible.
My name's Richard Collins and I'm Head of Programming at the RNCM. We were literally at the point of our summer programme going to print when we went into lockdown, which weirdly means that no one really even knows what we'd planned. There's a beautiful PDF of a brochure sitting on my desktop, but that's about as far as it got.
It doesn't do to dwell too long on what might have been. However, I wanted to share with you some of the plans that our programming team worked so hard on that are now postponed, cancelled, or otherwise radically changed.
Personally, I was gutted that we couldn't have Jennifer Walsh and Memo Acton's Ultra Chunk, a slightly insane AI and improvisatory work which was planned for June. I was also really looking forward to hearing James Macmillan's Seven Last Words in Holy Name Church, just down the road from the RNCM. We'd hoped to welcome the Scottish Ensemble with Anderson Dance, and they were going to give a day of music and movement workshops for our string students in May. The baritone Roderick Williams was going to come for an In the Round performance with soprano Carolyn Sampson. We'd planned a focus on the composer and clarinetist Mark Simpson's music, and we were also going to be taking our Erilyn Wallen focus down to Wigmore Hall. We're hoping to reschedule as much of that as we can into next season or beyond. I'm so aware of the loss of live music that people are experiencing at the moment, that for all the digital innovation right now, there'll be a real joy at being able to hear live music making again together as a community.
My name's Matt Whittam and I'm Programming Manager at the RNCM. There was some really, really great stuff lined up. I was looking forward to a collaboration, particularly with some animation students from Manchester Met, and that was going to be in our Wind Brass Percussion Festival, and they were going to be creating animations to some pieces of music by Stravinsky. We also had some brilliant shows this season as part of our Original Voices series. It's the little things as well that you feel disappointed not to be able to share. The finishing touches on the look and presentation of the season brochure. It's definitely not worth thinking too much about all the detail that you poured over at the time. It all seems quite irrelevant now. For example, we found a great picture of Arnold Schoenberg and his dog, which the Schoenberg Centre gave us permission to reproduce.
We'll be bringing you some of this music and some alternatives through various online means while the building is closed, including through this radio programme.
We had a long look at the things that we already had programmed. Much of this obviously wasn't able to go ahead in the form that we had originally planned, but some things can definitely be reprogrammed in similar slots next year.
We're doing what we can to provide ways for the students to keep performing from home and find ways to stay connected with our audiences. We've started a series of online concerts on Monday and Thursday lunchtimes, and that's involved live performances from students and staff. We've delved into our archives a bit and shared some of the great stuff from earlier this year and a bit further back. And we're looking forward to sharing some of the multi-track projects that the students have been working on. Hopefully as we go a bit further into the term, those performances will start to get a bit bolder and a bit more daring as people start to get used to the technology. We're going to keep the regular pattern of online concerts on Mondays and Thursdays and the radio show on Tuesdays going between now and June. I think having some sense of structure and normality is really helpful for people at this time, and we hope everyone is enjoying what we've put out so far. We're aware of how much online content there is out there, and we're trying to be careful not to do too much, but make sure it's pretty good when we do it. And we're conjuring up plans and thinking about what we can do towards the end of term, some kind of large-scale online project to mark the end of the year.
It's also been gratifying to see how a crisis brings out the best in people.
We've had some lovely offers from the artists that already have connections with the RNCM and also those that don't. Nicola Benedetti kicked off a series of online Q&As and masterclasses on the day that she would have been with us at the end of April. And we're planning more of these over the course of the term. I know we've already benefited so much from the offers of teaching from the likes of the pianist Jean-Eflain Bavouzet and many more. And those kinds of artists just really want to use this time to help other people and help young musicians. We'd love to keep hearing from students, from staff, from artists and alumni, hearing from people connected with the RNCM past and present, or even not connected to the RNCM at all, has been one of the most positive aspects of this time.
If you'd like to get in touch with the RNCM programming team and you're not sure of the best way to do this, then you can do so through the RNCM Radio email address on the college's website's media section. I asked Richard and Matt if this was all about making the best of a bad situation, or if this might have some positive, long-lasting impact.
There's no denying that we'll learn all sorts from this crisis. The way we've been forced to step up digitally at the moment has been hugely important, and the way we think about digital technology and how we curate content into the future is likely to become a lot more joined up and potentially multi-platform.
One thing I've certainly become much more aware of over these past few weeks is that we have an existing and growing online audience and a global community which the programme can do much more to serve. So I'm thinking much more now than ever before about how we stay connected to the audiences who aren't necessarily able to come to concerts or gigs, but for whom we can still offer something really valuable.
It's been a real treat delving into our audiovisual archives to re-enjoy past performances. You know, performances that were just really exciting at the time. And sometimes you even forget about the smaller stuff that made a real emotional impact at the time. Like our quite intimate Monday lunchtime series, they're a really good example of that.
At the moment, with performances coming in from households and small ensembles getting together online, the small scale is, perhaps, the most noticeable music making we have. In fact, the intimate Monday lunchtime series is one of the regular performance platforms that is continuing from the RNCM at the moment. What then of our larger scale endeavours? Our first piece from the archive is an extract from Engelbert Humperdinck's best known work, the opera Hansel and Gretel. Operas at the RNCM are, unsurprisingly, amongst the grandest of the work we do. Here this is readily apparent in the two casts, the elaborate sets, and the live orchestra, even using Derek Clark's reduced orchestration. I spoke with two key members of the cast about this process and their experiences in putting the opera together.
Hello, my name is Ian Henderson. I am an alumni of the RNCM. I studied a one-year master's as well as the International Artist Diploma. The first process is learning the music. That starts on your own, then you get coaching time, then you work with the conductor, usually only one rehearsal with the conductor up front, and then you are basically expected to have the music learnt by then, and because you're into the room for the staging rehearsals with the director. Staging can take anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the size of the production, or if it's a new production, or various other factors as well. And then you hit the stage and things change all over again because you're in a different space. So you have to slightly adjust and relearn the staging just to fit a different space.
And of course, every opera has its own idiosyncrasies.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Budham and I'm a mezzo-soprano. I graduated from the RNCM in 2018 after 6 years of study. I did both my undergraduate and master's degrees there. I know it's a fairy tale opera, but the actual process of putting it together was quite magical for me. And magical in the sense that we had permission to behave like children. It was very liberating.
I will say that this opera required the most amount of makeup, personally, that I've ever had. I hope there's photos that come up, or someone can share some photos, because they the character that I got to play was phenomenal. The makeup, I was in the chair, from memory, I was in the chair for about an hour. I did 3 shows, so I was in the makeup chair actually longer than I was on stage.
I was curious to hear from Charlotte and Ian, both playing characters of different ages, genders and experiences to their own, what it was like to bring these roles to life.
I love playing trouser roles, much more than female roles actually, but I feel that Hansel is my kindred spirit of opera roles. And physicality became an integral part of my character, which I think in turn fed itself into Hansel's music. I think with this being an opera based on a Grimm brothers fairy tale, I ended up adopting a very exaggerated theatrical movement style. But I think that the most important part of the process really was building my relationship with my Gretel, who was the soprano Daniela Saccari. I, of course, knew Danny at college, but we weren't close friends, so we had a clean slate to draw on together, which was really nice. And I think it's important to note that Hansel and Gretel are on stage together for almost the entirety of the opera, and they never appear separately. They always come as a pair. And I felt that Danny and I really allowed ourselves to enter into the world of play together to the point where we were goofing around all the time, both in and out of the rehearsal room.
The witch scene is actually quite a big scene, and it was a lot of fun to do. Playing a villain was so much fun. I got to let loose. At one point I was rolling dough, and I remember in one show in particular, we had the rolling pin, and I meant to be beating the dough and rolling it out so that we can then put the kids into the dough. And I hit the table so hard that the rolling pin broke. And I have seen the recording of this moment, and somehow I managed to continue singing. That was one thing that baffled me, but it was not meant to happen, and the props lady wasn't... Louise was not altogether happy with me, having broken one of the props, and there was still at least one show, maybe 2 shows to go there. But I still remember parts of it now, some moments that were extremely difficult musically, and I actually would love to do the show again. Would be absolutely brilliant.
Before we hear the music, I was curious to find out what Ian and Charlotte are up to now, and what kind of projects exist for up-and-coming opera stars when all the venues are closed.
I am involved in 2 productions at the moment that are completely online. We record things each week and send them through to, in one case I'm doing a production of Così fan tutte by Mozart, and each week we release an episode. It's called Quarantine Così. You can find it on Facebook. And the other one is called Coronavirus the Musical, and that is with a friend of mine from Australia also, who's actually living in London at the moment. His name is Sean O'Boyle, and he is a composer and conductor and is writing a musical.
I feel that this time has really pushed me to think and be creative in different ways, especially the technical side of things. And one project that I'm currently involved in, it's one online of course, it's a project called Opera Harmony, which involves composers, librettists, singers, directors and instrumentalists from across the world. So it's really nice to be able to connect with people from everywhere. And Opera Harmony are producing a series of online micro operas. The piece I'm involved in is due to be published at the end of May, I think. So despite some doors being closed during this time, there have also been ones which have been opened.
So let's hear a section of the opera. The story needs little introduction, and this section is taken from the 3rd act, where Hansel and Gretel first find the gingerbread house and are unable to resist trying it. The witch comes in and tells them she loves to feed children sweets, but they grow suspicious, so she casts a spell on them to control their movements. This is the RNCM's 2018 live production of Engelbert Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel, with Charlotte Badham as Hansel, Daniela Sicari as Gretel, and Ian Henderson as the witch, and the RNCM Opera Orchestra conducted by Anthony Krauss.
Everything's quiet. Oh, the silence is goldish. Come, why don't we taste it? Don't be so foolish. Hansel, I'm sure it wasn't meant to deceive. This food are for nothing. No, don't be naive. But look, it has such a friendly face. I will just meant us to find this place. Perhaps you are right. But Gretel, that's why we both dreamt of them last night. Come, the prospect is far too enticing now. I cannot resist, it's so to be Did you hear that? The breeze, just wind in the trees. You like it? Come on, it's your turn. It is so delicious, you have to have some more. Oh, it is such heaven than before. It's divine, it's so enticing, so sweet, delicious. Oh, it's so tasty. This person knows how to make a pastry. Look what I found. Let's eat some more. I've never seen such fun before. The breeze, just wind in the trees. Hansel, don't be so greedy. Remember the poor and the needy. Eat on your own and leave me alone. You should say please, no wind or breeze. Don't be in tears, I yet to resist. Let me go. Strongest night, and you my bounteous child. You come on a visit. Fancy that. I love little children, oh soft and fat. Oh, my Let me go. No, don't. sie lickspittle. When you're with me, there's nothing to fear. Quite harmless, just a poor dear. I'm fond of children, as you will see. That's why I love her to have and for tea. I love to see children of cross and forceful, especially you, the daintiest morsel. Come, little mousie, come into my housey. Look, it's the cave of Aladdin, a place a child could go mad in. There are apple tarts and meringues like snow, chocolate mousse like forest gets on. There's buttermilk and cream, oh so good, eat your favorite. Yes, I know it's rice pudding. There's toad in the hole there, and mountains of profiteroles there, and gold as a treat just for you, my sweet. Yes, oh, that's for you to eat. I won't go in, it's all just a lie. Say no to strangers. My, aren't we sly? My children, I'm trying so hard to be nice. You'll find that my house is a paradise. Come, I will guard her. You'll play in the larder. You'll be petted and pampered, and none of your things will be hampered. I'd rather have them too. Let's see. We two will feed him and fatten him. Those scrawny limbs will tenderly nourish. His milk-fed body will flourish. And when he's plump and half asleep, and docile and obedient like a sheep, then Hansel, let me speak in your ear, your moment of greatest glory is here. Speak out loud and not in my ear. How does this so-called glory appear? Well, just remember, when it is near, you shut your eyes and forget what you hear. Oh, but I lose both my ears and my eyes, and I can tell that you're telling lies. Better, what she says is a trick. No, not a race. What's it like? Stop! Hopeless witch's ground makes the victim rustle round. Stand stock still, obey the witch. When she points her hazel switch, like a stone, don't even twitch. Hocus pocus, then comes Yocus. Child, obey or you are dead. Face the front, heart straight ahead. to the cage where you'll be fed. Hocus pocus, bonus yocus, malus locus, hocus pocus, bonus yocus, malus locus, hocus pocus, bonus yocus, malus locus. Hocus pocus.
It's a particular pleasure to welcome our next 4 RNCM student to the programme, as this is someone whose work I'm particularly familiar with.
Hello, Larry Goats. This is William Hearn from Bethlehem Casuals, former student at the RNCM, used to study composition under your tutorship. So Bethlehem Casuals was a band that was started at the RNCM. 7-piece, kind of prog, party, mashup, lots of different genres. And yeah, the band is made up of a mixture of classical and pop course students. And I don't know whether it was unusual. There's quite a lot of bands at the time that were mixing classical and pop course, but usually it would be somebody on the classical course who could play guitar, who wrote songs, and they would be playing guitar while they had a band made completely out of pop course, or it'd be somebody on the pop course who was a singer-songwriter who wanted strings for their band. But this was one of the only bands where we had a sort of writing force that was made up of both pop and classical musicians, and then one musician who plays the saxophone who was studying at the university, and he was studying a lot of jazz. The perfect storm, you could say.
I was disappointed that their album launch concert was cancelled because of the pandemic. I was looking forward to be taken through the peculiar narrative for this new concept album.
We've just released a new album called The Tragedy of Street Dog. We have this 56-minute sort of prog rock album that tells the story of a house pet who finds his owner lying dead in his house, and his owner is an old lady who's never let him have any fun. And so he decides he's going to go out and have fun. So he goes into Manchester, he gets into trouble, and then he realizes that all the music in Manchester has disappeared and no one knows where it is. So then he goes on a hunt to find where the music has gone. This takes him to the beast of the Oki that lives in Salford. It takes him to the ghosts of the Hacienda, and it takes him to Magpie Park, where he finally confronts his nemesis, River Rat, and the rest is history.
We're going to hear a track off the new album. I asked Will to talk a bit about, essentially, the title track, Street Dog.
Well, when I was in first and second year, it was a song that I loved to play on the acoustic guitar and just play it on my own and sing it. And I'd often sing it to our friends, at the end of a very long night, bust out the guitar and do the tune everyone loves. And it took us a very long time, many years, to work out how to orchestrate it for the band in a way that it was actually better than just playing it on acoustic guitar, because we could do it in various styles, but at the end of the day it was just us playing on it rather than us actually making it better, which is a problem when you have 7 big personalities in a band. Everyone can play on something and add their own personality, but it's difficult to get the essence right. And I think with this orchestration, this recording, it actually changed how as a band we view ourselves and how as a band we view making a song and playing on a song. So yeah, Bethlehem Casuals, forever.
Well, it was just one night, about a year had passed. I was hunched in a Manchester underpass. I was half cut, half case, loser in my soul. Scared of eternity and scared of getting old. When suddenly a dog appeared down the road with a stride. He sauntered down the road to end up at my side, and I could tell by the cock of his walk he was sure that nothing could prepare me for what was in store. It was and with one milky eye he looked to my soul and he asked, "What are you doing here? Do you know?" To which I could reply without any words, but he was already pouring tequila and no one seemed to care. It was and he said, "Drink with me and I'll decipher all your dreams. You'll be dead tonight, you'll see, but then you'll rise so happily. And I know that time has gone and you're wondering where I'm from, but there's one thing that's set in stone, and I'm alone. Yes, I'm alone. Yes, I'm alone. 'Cause I'm a street dog dressed in disguise. Nothing gets past my one milky eye. And now you've taken these words, you put them in your head. It's time you've learned some manners and respect, 'cause you find the divine won't slip from your mind. Struggle to keep up, you won't fall behind, because sometimes this world, it doesn't need to be kind. Ceased to shine, and it was true what he said. I was starting to fall behind, trying to see straight and walk with one eye, when his face leaned into mine and his teeth gave a smile. And he pushed and I fell so far, right down to hell. And all the men were working well, all in their suits, they looked so swell. And he said, "Listen, son, you want to be another one, to continue the life that you've begun, or you could be alone. Yeah, you could be alone. Yeah, you could be alone. You could be a street dog."
That was Bethlehem Casuals, who are Will Hearn, Arwen Blandford, Pip Sawyers, Joe Woodhouse, George Burridge, Atanas Dochev and William Graham, playing the title track from their new album, The Tragedy of Street Dog. Go and buy it now. Professor David Horn, head of the RNCM Graduate School and, appropriately, a composer and pianist, has kindly agreed to introduce the next piece.
Brahms's Paganini Variations is one of the masterpieces of the piano literature. In terms of Brahms's own output, it represents two specific musical aspects that preoccupied him, particularly in his piano music. So the idea of variations, and also the idea of studies or etudes. In other words, the idea that you can have a piece of music which is both trying out a technical pianistic idea, but at the same time also a compositional etude. Of course, this goes back to Chopin, his Opus 10 etudes, and then Opus 25, were the first works which really combined this idea of trying out piano technique, but also combining that with compositional technique and the idea of limiting a musical idea. Variation structure itself was, by Brahms's time, considered by some composers to be old-fashioned, a relic of an earlier era. Wagner, for example, was particularly critical of the variation form, and yet even he conceded that Brahms, in his own sets of variations, really showed the musical world that there was still much currency in this kind of musical structure. It is, of course, a set of variations on the famous Paganini Caprice No. 24, and that famous work is also a set of variations on the original theme. And it's worth noting how many other composers have taken this theme and indeed written their own variations on that. One of the earliest piano works to do this is one of the Liszt Paganini studies. The sixth takes the 24th Caprice and essentially transcribes it so it sticks to the original structure and adds some new musical ideas here or there, but essentially it's keeping the original. Interestingly, Liszt himself commented on Brahms's Paganini variations and conceded they were far superior to his, although as Liszt quipped, he wrote his first. And it's an unfair comparison in a way, because what Brahms is doing is not sticking to the original structure of the Paganini Caprice, although he does take some of the ideas from various variations. You'll actually hear this very clearly in the first variation in the Brahms, which has some overlap with the first in the Paganini Caprice. Brahms wrote over 50 works that could be considered etudes. Not all of them were intended to be performed in public, although the Paganini variations certainly were, and Brahms himself performed them. Another of his notable etudes is his arrangement for the left hand only of the famous Bach violin chaconne. And about that work, Brahms wrote that by restricting the piano to the left hand, he felt he was in touch with the sense of the violin playing of the original. Now this is interesting because it demonstrates that Brahms was not only interested in musical representations, but was also thinking about the physical representation of the original. And indeed, in some of the Paganini variations of Brahms, we have these allusions to the string writing of the Paganini. To also think of some other works inspired by the Paganini, obviously the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody in the theme of Paganini is very well known, and that's a set of 24 variations, so much bigger than the 11 of the Paganini Caprice. But still there's some overlap. So for example, the 19th variation in the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody, which even marks quasi-pizzicato in the piano part, has an allusion to the famous left-hand pizzicato variation of the Paganini. Lutosławski's variations for two pianos on the Paganini theme, like the Liszt, actually sticks almost exactly to the original structure, but uses his own distinctive 20th century musical language, so that the harmonies and other musical aspects sound quite different. Returning to the Brahms, while it is arguably one of his most technically challenging works, Brahms's music is never about overt virtuosity per se. In other words, we never hear difficult music for the sake of the difficulty. And throughout the variations, he is always thinking structurally, he's telling us a story, there's a compelling musical narrative. All of this combines to make the Brahms Paganini variations among one of the most satisfying piano works written.
That was Maxim Kinizov playing Brahms's Variations on a Theme by Paganini in his RNCM International Artist Diploma recital from earlier this year. Next we turn to one of our current popular music students to hear about her experiences working with the RNCM Session Orchestra.
Hi, I'm Jodie Buckland. I am a singer-songwriter currently studying in my 4th year at the RNCM studying pop vocals. Every single session orchestra gig I've played in has had such an exciting atmosphere. Playing to the hundreds of people in the theatre is so exciting, especially singing with 7 singers whilst being backed with a whole session orchestra is just the most exciting feeling, and especially when our energy bounces back off the crowd.
I asked Jodie to tell us a bit about the song we're going to hear.
So my song is Should Have Known. I wrote this at the end of 2018 when I was taking part in the International Songwriters Competition in Haarlem in the Netherlands, which I was lucky enough to come second with this song in that competition, which was amazing. The song was about a breakup, as lots of songs are, but I used my emotions through that to inspire the lyrics of that song. And then was lucky enough to be able to perform it with the RNCM Session Orchestra in their originals showcase. And I did the arrangement for that myself, which I was really happy with.
We had to go to what everybody else does. We follow the rules and get everyone to like us. All is okay, that's what they say, 'cause that's all that matters anyway. Now we're a month in, every day's a weekend. We still believe in feeling like we're dreaming. This is insane, where have you been? I wanna be with you every day. Oh, I know, oh. We need to go slow, yeah, we need to slow it. Oh, I know, oh. We need to go slow, we need to slow it. Should've known that you knew that I'm not for you. But I know 'cause I trusted you. Ooh. Should've known that day you stood there with nothing to say. But now that I know the truth, ooh. We're getting bad, but I don't know what you're thinking. You say it's alright, but you always got a drinking. What do? Have I lost you? Or pretending that I never knew? Thought it was me, thought that I was going crazy. But in the end, it was all your other ladies. I'm not insane, always the same. I'm fed over playing in your game. Oh, I know, oh. We need to go slow, yeah, we need to slow it. Oh, I know, oh. We need to go slow, we need to slow it.
That was Should Have Known, written and performed by Jodie Buckland with the RNCM Session Orchestra, directed by Andy Stott. I hope you've enjoyed this Just Getting Started survey of some of the highly eclectic RNCM musical archive. We're going to finish our broadcast with another song by Jodie Buckland. I can't think of a more appropriate sentiment to finish this programme on. This is Jodie's self-released song, Silver Lining.
A week, a year, don't know how long it takes to feel something so strong. Feel you're locked away and all alone. No way out, stuck inside a maze. Pushed about, left in a daze. Blinded by the sunlight on your face. Who gave you no direction? Knocked you down, blurred your reflection. Need to see clearly once again. Who am I to know that the stars will fly over me? Even when the clouds come over, the whole world keeps moving further. And I know the pain will fall down, drowning in a storm of clouds. I know somewhere within, I know I'll find a silver lining. No one left for you, you're isolated, left in no one's dreams tonight. No right or wrong will change a thing. Twist and turn, the endless road will force you forward. No other way is possible. Your infinite heart can be no more. Who gave you no direction? Knocked you down, blurred your reflection. Need to see clearly once again. Who am I to know that the stars will fly over me? Even when the clouds